Dr. Tony D. Collins is here to encourage, motivate, inspire, guide you into excellence. Your success matters. Your dreams matter. Sign up right now with Shepherd One Coaching and become a better you. Dr. Tony D. Collins is here to encourage, motivate, inspire, guide you into excellence. Your success matters. Your dreams matter. Sign up right now with Shepherd One Coaching and become a better you. Dr. Tony D. Collins is here to encourage, motivate, inspire, guide you into excellence. Your success matters. Your dreams matter. Sign up right now with Shepherd One Coaching and become a better you. Dr. Tony D. Collins is here to encourage, motivate, inspire, guide you into excellence. Your success matters. Your dreams matter. Sign up right now with Shepherd One Coaching and become a better you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for this evening's edition of Mocha Moments. Let me greet everyone who's already logged on: Toya, Vera, Tisha, Dora, Joyce, and Cassandra. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. There are some of you that have logged on, but you haven't sent me a greeting to let me know that you're with me yet. So if you're with us, please type something in the comments. At least say hello to me this evening. I would sure love to know who I have with us that's sharing with this particular Mocha Moment session. Thank you, Tisha, for reminding us that today is Juneteenth, and happy Juneteenth to everyone. A very historic day. I know some people observe it and some people care not to, but it's a moment and time in the history of African American people that most people deem to be very, very significant. For those of you that may not know what Juneteenth is all about, it was actually the day that some slaves officially found out that they had been free after 2.5 years. Once they got the word that they had been free, I'm quite sure there was a celebration around it then, but there's certainly a celebration around it now. And we're kind of making a little bit of progress now that it has become actually a national holiday. From what I understand, the banks were closed today, and some of the government offices were closed today as well. And, it's a wonderful thing. When we start to commemorate some of the significant days in the history of African American people. I noticed a comment already from Joyce Lee where she said she was getting ready to send out an SOS. Well, I wonder who she would have been looking for. Where does she need help from? Well, y'all, actually, I know I have been missing the past couple of days, but just like with everybody else, with pastors and um, um, vodcast host and radio host and all of that, life happens every now and then. And sometimes the things that you plan to do don't always work out the way you want them to. There were some things that kind of got in the way, and my humanity kicked in. In other words, I had a spurt there where I had just been drained and exhausted for some reason or another, because there were some things that popped up that didn't allow me to be able to come on as I had intended to. But I gave you all this disclaimer from the very beginning that I was going to come on every time I felt inspired to come on. And I'd rather do it that way, because if I really don't have anything to say, I don't want to waste anybody's time by just coming on here, taking up space and people's valuable time. I want I want it to be like this. Every time that I come on, I want to be able to share something with you of great significance and of value. Y'all know what my objective is. It's to add value to the lives of people. I think the fact that I was out of sight and out of mind for a while, some people have just totally forgotten me, because yet and still, I don't see a lot of the people that I'm used to talking to. They haven't connected with us yet. Let me pause for the calls and say good evening. Lady Ann just joined us, and y'all know I always give special recognition to my girl, my boo. Y'all know how I do. Good evening to Lady Ann. Let me thank all of you that threw up that Mocha Crew hashtag. Yeah, I appreciate that. For those of you that are joining us for the very first time, you might be asking, what is this Mocha Crew all about? That's the crew that's very much a part of this community. We're a community of people that simply believes in adding value to the lives of other people. Something strange happens now every time I find myself holding the door for people who are entering a building behind me or whatever. I often think about all of you, those of you that are part of the Mocha crew, I think about you because I talk all the time about how small gestures uh, serve and prove to add value to the lives of people. And one of the wonderful experiences that I've been getting recently as a result of me holding the door for the people who are following behind me, about to enter into a building behind me, I'm finding more and more people are starting to say thank you. They're starting to express their appreciation. And the fact that they would say thank you said that I've done something that others have appreciated. And that's a good feeling to know that you can do things, just small things, that other people can truly appreciate. And so I want to encourage you to carry the Mocha Crew spirit wherever you go and in whatever setting that you're in. And if people happen to ask you why you do some of the wonderful things that you do, just tell them, say, well, I'm a part of a great community called the Mocha Crew. Yeah, I'm a part of the Mocha Crew, and that's what we do. We add value to the lives of other people. So again, I just wanted to roll that out to you real quickly. Tonight I kind of want to talk about or allude to or talk about what I've alluded to just recently with regards to life happening and things changing and all of that, because as life happens and things change and things pop up, depending on what those things are, um, um, you can get so overwhelmed by what's going on around you that you can somewhat lose your passion for doing the things that you really know that you've been put on earth to do, or that you have a calling to do, you have a passion to do. And when you get in that spot wherein you feel like you're starting to lose your passion for something, it's very important that you do the right things or the things necessary for reigniting your passion. Um, let me just say from the beginning that I've been doing ministry most all of my life, really for as long as I can remember. And I've been doing it on a very serious level. Some of you know my story about how I started directing choirs when I was 5 years old. And actually, I was the main director for my dad's adult choir at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church at the age of 10. And so since I started at 5, started directing the choir, directed the junior male chorus at Zion Travelers Missionary Baptist Church, which was our initial family church. I started there at the age of 5. And if you would just do the math, I will be turning 62 years old on next week. And so if I've been doing this since I was 5, that means for 57 years, I've been working in ministry, and I've had major responsibility. Directing the choir was just the tip of the iceberg. That was one of the first things that I was responsible for doing. I went from choir director. I was my dad's minister of music at the age of 14. And so I was responsible for selecting the music and teaching the music to adults every week. I was responsible for selecting what songs we were going to sing every Sunday for the worship experience. I was entrenched in that. I had to work with people constantly on a regular basis. And I know some of you have heard me say this before, and I don't say it for dramatic effect, but it's a reality. One of the toughest jobs in ministry, aside from actually pastoring the church, is the job or the task of being over the music department, working with various personalities and various giftings or even lack thereof, and trying to make sure everything stays held together and make sure everything is going and flowing. And, I went from doing music to other things with regards to ministry. And it seemed like with everything that God was progressively pushing me towards my ultimate assignment, which I'm serving in as we speak as senior pastor. I can tell you a number of things that I've done in ministry, a number of things that I was responsible for um, in ministry over my years of being involved in ministry. And I was always placed or drafted into some type of leadership role. But, after you do certain things for so long, if you do it long enough, there's going to come a time where you become a little tired, you become a little weary, you become a little discouraged, you become a little bit disgruntled, and you start to lose your passion for doing that which you have been destined to do. You start to lose that passion. And it's an odd feeling when you start to lose passion for something that you've been doing, and you've been doing effectively for a very, very long time. Now, believe you me, this type of situation doesn't just happen in ministry. It happens in life. It happens in the workplace. It happens with careers. And when you find yourself in a place wherein you start to lose your passion for something, you will then thereby discover that you're starting to lose your effectiveness, or at least you start to feel like you're losing your effectiveness in doing the thing that that you were meant to do. And it's not a good feeling. Believe it or not, I've had at least a couple of different times over the course of my pastoral ministry where I truly just about convinced myself that I no longer had it. I no longer could do it. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't being effective enough. Didn't think I was reaching anybody. And the average person that would be able to observe me while I was ministering to the people of God, they would never believe, they couldn't believe that I was ever having those kinds of feelings. I know one person that's on here right now that can truly attest to that is Lady Ann. I can't tell you the number of times that I kind of had to share with her that I just wasn't feeling it uh, like I wanted to or felt like I should anymore. There were several times, and I must say several times, where I truly contemplated walking away and doing something totally different because I was no longer feeling a sense of effectiveness. I just wasn't feeling the way that I thought I should feel. And, I had to mature and learn that the assignments that are given to us, we shouldn't try to engage our assignment strictly based on how we feel about our assignment or strictly based on how we feel while we're in a certain season in that assignment. But you should engage your assignment based on knowing that you have been called or assigned or ordained, however you want to phrase it. You should approach it knowing that since this is something you were ordained or destined to do, that conviction alone it should sustain you and keep you motivated and inspired enough to continue to do that which you are already doing and you need to continue to do. But it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes feelings can get in the way. Why? Because sometimes we are flooded by so many things that we become overwhelmed to the degree that our feelings will at times override our conviction about a thing. Okay. Um, and I really had to learn that. It took me some time to learn that, to discover that, and to operate within the confines of my convictions and not just within the confines of my emotions or my feelings. And so I literally had to, when I came to these points wherein I felt like giving up, throwing in the towel, thinking that I was done, thinking that it was over for me, thinking it was time to do something else, I had to discover a way to reignite my passion. And one of the reasons why I had to discover a way to reignite my passion is because as I would pray about what I was feeling at the time, God would never give me any sense of release. He would never give me any sense of release. In other words, as I prayed, God more so confirmed that I was still right where I needed to be and doing what I was supposed to be doing. In other words, he was not going to let me off the hook at that given time. And I'm a person, I don't know about everybody else or anybody else, and it really doesn't matter how anybody else does anything. I've got to do things the way I know are best for me to do things. But I'm a person who really takes seriously the assignment that God has placed on my life. If I really didn't take seriously the assignment that God has placed on my life, the calling he has placed on my life, I would have walked away from ministry better than 20 something years ago. I really was, because I had gone through a bad stretch. I was in a bad place, and I just wanted to just throw in the towel and just forget about it, give it all up, and go on about my business doing something else. But God being who he is, and he operating the way he does, he refused to allow me to just walk away from my assignment. He knew better than myself. He knew what was in store. He knew what was up the road. He knew who he had ordained for me to minister to. And he knew that the space that I was in at the time, I wouldn't remain in that place and in that space always. But in the process of discovering all this, I had to literally find out how to reignite the passion that I had always had. You know, um, I grew up in ministry, and I have always loved being engaged in ministry from as early as I can remember. I've always loved being engaged in ministry. The church has always been my happy place. I could enjoy myself in a worship experience, in a church setting, as much as anybody could enjoy themselves anywhere else. But I did get to a point wherein my passion for doing ministry had begun to fizzle. And like I said a little while ago, it didn't just happen once, but it has happened on a couple of different occasions over my years of doing ministry. And so I want to share with you some things that I learned and discovered that I needed to do in order to reignite or to even now maintain your passion. Because believe it or not, your passion, you need to be able to know, you need to know how to do passion maintenance. Yeah. You got to maintain your passion. You got to work constantly on maintaining your passion, especially when you know without a shadow of a doubt that you were meant to do a certain thing. So here's what you need to do. The first thing that you need to do to reignite your passion, the first thing you need to do is to disengage. Now, that may sound strange, but it is what I've discovered that at least I had to do. And hopefully this will work for you. You have to disengage. There are times when I talk about disengage, I'm simply talking about stepping back. Sometimes you have to step back, step away from the ongoing duties or responsibilities that you may have with regards to whatever assignment you have or responsibility you have on your life. Sometimes you have to totally disengage. And this becomes very difficult sometimes for leaders, especially those who are leaders of ministry, because there are times that we become so spiritual in our thinking that our thinking stops being practical to the degree that we almost deny our humanity. And that can be destructive if that kind of thinking gets out of hand. Full transparency, there was a time when I felt like the church couldn't stand to be without me for any period of time. It was like I thought I had to be there. I had to be at the church. I had to be constantly engaged in ministry for the ministry to continue to flow and go as it should. And the truth is, I was really kind of killing myself. I was killing myself, not just physically, but I was killing myself spiritually and emotionally. Why? Because when I was in that space, I could feel no sense of satisfaction. And anytime you engage in doing anything, anytime you pour your entire life, your entire being into doing something, you expect something in return, if it's nothing more than the sense of satisfaction, knowing that you are fulfilling your particular purpose. And there were times that I was working, that I was busy, that I was going. I was doing, but I did not feel any sense of satisfaction. So what did I have to do? I had to disengage. I had to step away. I had to remove myself. Now, you can do all of that without becoming totally disconnected. There's a difference between disengaging from the work and becoming totally disconnected from the ministry or the organization. Sometimes you simply need to take a break. That season of disengagement, that period of disengagement, that period of taking a break, it will work wonders for you, believe it or not. Once you disengage, the next thing you need to do is decompress. Decompressing is so important because sometimes unconsciously we are constantly taking in so much and processing so much, and we're so engaged that we start to create somewhat of a bottleneck in our emotions, in our energies, and all of that. Things start to get kind of jammed up because you got so much crowding your mind, you've got so much crowding your spirit, and you never take the time to release some of that you've built up inside of you. As wonderful as some things may be, there comes a time where you need to decompress. You need to unload. You need to release some things. And the only way that that's going to happen is that you first got to disengage. You will not decompress if you don't first disengage. So the two work hand in hand, disengaging and decompressing. One is not going to be effective without the other. You got to be able to do both. You've got to be intentional about doing both. Once you disengage, once you decompress, that's when you give yourself time to recover. That's when you become very intentional about doing absolutely nothing that pertains to what you do all the time. I think I mentioned on here last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago how Lady Ann finally helped me to realize how important it is for me to take a real vacation. I used to think that if I went out of town, then I was taking a vacation, but I really wasn't, because my phone would be with me and I would answer every call that would come through, especially if I thought it was pertaining to the church. And there were times that I was doing just as much business outside of the city as I was inside of the city, handling all this church business while I'm supposed to be on vacation. And the reason why I did it and could justify my doing it is because I convinced myself that if I don't do it, then the ministry is just going to fall apart. Now, y'all, please understand, I wasn't suffering from any kind of egotistical complex or anything of that nature. You know, that it wasn't because I thought that I was all that, but it was because I believed that I had a certain responsibility that I did not want to fall short with regards to carrying out that responsibility. And so I convinced myself that if I miss certain moments or miss taking care of certain things, then I would ultimately wind up dropping the ball and becoming a failure, or causing a problem to be created within the ministry as a result of my absence or disengagement. Well, y'all can give me somewhat of a pass because I was young. I was still learning. I was doing what I had seen other pastors do. And I wanted to be the best pastor that I could possibly be. I wanted to be the best leader I could possibly be. And so I did those things that I thought effective leaders did, or effective leaders do. That's what I was doing. And so I wasn't taking the time to disengage, to decompress, nor was I taking the time to recover. But once I discovered how wonderful recovery time can be, that's when I started to adjust my thinking. I started to adjust my thinking, and I took on a different perspective. I started to realize, and even now convince myself, that if I am an effective leader, if I do my job very well, then I should be able to step away for a period of time and everything continues to run like a well-oiled machine. I had to convince myself of that. And I'm telling you, it's the best thing that I could have done for myself. Because now when I would disengage and decompress, I could actually go through a process of recovery. I could rest my mind. I could rest my spirit. I could rest my body. And in the process of recovering, I would then start to recharge, which is the next step. I hope you're following me. You disengage, you decompress, you start to recover, and then at some point, you start to recharge. Okay? You start feeling that fire and that passion that you're used to possessing while you're engaging in doing what you do. That fire, that passion starts to reignite. You start to feel it again. You know, when you've had this time to step away, when you've had this time to rest, to relax, to recreate, where we get the word recreation from, recreation, you know, when you've had the time to do all of that, then you start to become recharged and re-energized for doing what you know that you have been intended to do. Sometimes it takes time, you know, it takes stepping away for you to realize that you really love what you do, but you've become somewhat worn down because you've never taken a break from doing what you love to do. And then once you have recharged, once that passion gets reignited, then and only then are you ready to return to what you're doing. It is amazing. You know, honestly, the past 5-10 years or so, as I was starting to mature and learn this, and this became very important to me, I started to see, or you all began to see, what comes out of me taking these times to disengage, decompress, recover, recharge. You all would see once I would return. There have been so many times that you all have said to me after me coming back from a real vacation, Pastor, we can tell you've got some rest. Why? I've gotten rest. You can tell it because I'm more clear with my thinking. I'm more clear with my speech. I'm more clear with my delivery. I have a lot more energy. Now, some of you only equate that to me preaching longer than I typically preach. And if that's true, then so be it. But you ought to thank God for that, because you can say that when that happens, oh, he's gone away. He's had some time to recharge, to re-energize, and to reaffirm his passion. I return ready to get back to work. And I always feel that I'm much more effective after I've had a time of recreation and relaxation and decompression and disengagement. I feel so much more renewed. Yes, Ron, I feel renewed in mind and in spirit. And recharging does help in so many ways. People really just don't understand. And again, it doesn't just happen in ministry. It doesn't just happen with pastors. It happens for people who are in leadership roles. Anyone that has a significant leadership role, especially when you are the top individual with regards to leading an organization, when you have people who are working with you and for lack of a better term, under you, it's so important that you keep your fires of passion red hot, if at all possible. Because if you as a leader begin to fizzle, then the passion of your entire organization has the potential to fizzle as well. Because if you are truly the leader, then those following are going to follow your lead. That is so true. Let me get to some of your comments here. Again, I've talked about overworking yourself, not taking the time to disengage and decompress and recover, recharge, and then return. Toya says, with regards to that, it can become counterproductive. That's a good way to look at it. It definitely can become counterproductive. Tisha says, make sure, oh, I'm sorry. Well, she's encouraging y'all to hit those, that like button. Yeah, be sure to hit the like button. Toya says there's nothing wrong with delegating tasks. No, it really isn't. It really isn't. But let me also say this, and some of you all may not like it when I say this. You got to be very careful when you start delegating tasks. You got to make sure that you're delegating tasks to the right people. You got to make sure that the people that you delegate tasks to are going to show up in the same manner that you show up, at least with the same energy. You know, you can't expect anybody to be a carbon copy of yourself, but they've got to be on the same page. They've got to be on the same wavelength. They've got to be one who is really committed to following the vision that you set as a leader. They've got to be one that you can definitely count on. Toya also say it's hard to give 100% when your battery isn't 100. That's absolutely right. Man, when you're trying to operate on low energy, when that battery is not fully charged, I think that's a good analogy to use right there, Toya. When that battery is not fully charged, then it becomes difficult to even now get that engine started. You know, I know it's time for me to take a break when I feel like I just have to fight through the feeling of not wanting to go, fight through the feeling of not wanting to get up and do, regardless of the fact that I know I have to do, you know. Yeah. Tisha, she's put up there all the things that I've covered so far with regards to what you need to do to reignite your passion. Adore says, and it does, Bishop, you have great ministers and they do a great job in your absence. Now, let me be clear about something like that, okay? And that's true. I do have great ministers that do a great job in my absence with regards to preaching. Now, why am I pointing that out? Because a lot of people think that the pastor, especially the senior pastor, they think that the pastor's primary job is just to preach. For me, that's the easy part, preaching. It's all the other stuff that I have to take care of with regards to overseeing the ministry. Okay. And don't get me wrong, I'm not minimizing the importance of preaching, but that's all that most people see. Let me share this with you very quickly. Do you not know that when most people talk about people and their jobs, if a pastor is brought up in that conversation, I've literally heard people say, no, we're talking about people who have real jobs. Oh my goodness. Really? If I've heard that once, I've heard it 100 times. No, we're talking about people who have real jobs. Even now, my children have tried to exclude me out of certain conversations about working in the workplace and working a job and all that. They said, no, we're talking about people who have real jobs. What in the world do you think a pastor has? A pastor who's truly pastoring a church has a real job. And it's a job that most people couldn't last in for a week if they had to face everything that pastors have to face just with regards to their responsibilities outside of the pulpit. T.D. Jakes once said, I believe I'm quoting this right, and I heard him say it when he said, if I wanted to kill my enemies, I'll let them pastor my church for 1 week. Why? Because of all that goes into pastoring a church. Now, I don't want to make this just about pastoring church, but I'm just trying to get you to understand that because the issue we were talking about here is the whole thing about delegation. And it doesn't just apply to ministry, but it applies to any organization. Quite naturally, you have people that work in positions that are under that of the top leadership. But even when it comes to delegation, that top leader, when he's going to delegate or she's going to delegate responsibility, they have to be very, very careful about delegating that responsibility. And that's one of the reasons why many of them, when they supposed to be vacationing and disengaged and decompressing and all of that, they stay so engaged or so connected because they're not 100% sure that they can trust who they've left to be in charge in their absence. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. So again, it's a tricky thing, but it's absolutely necessary. First Lady says you have a real job, and she can definitely speak to that because she absolutely knows what I have to deal with on a regular basis. Some of the business negotiations that I have to engage in, some of the business dealings that I have to engage in, a lot of people wouldn't be able to take that heat. It's a lot of responsibilities, a lot of the things, the decisions that I have to make. It's a lot of responsibility. Joyce, you are so right. A lot of people don't look at it like this. The pastor is the CEO, the chief executive officer. And a lot of times when people call the church, even now for business reasons, they want to know or they want to talk to the senior pastor. That's the reason why I thank God for a good executive assistant, administrative assistant. I thank God for a good administrative assistant who knows how to screen certain calls. That's very, very important because, everybody doesn't need to get to me. If I fielded every call that came in wherein people thought it was absolutely necessary that they talk to me, I'd spend most of my days on the phone trying to handle ridiculous stuff that doesn't even pertain to me or the ministry. Okay. And some of these people, once they get you on the phone, it's hard to get them off. You're talking about working for the church or pastor, and Deacon Ron says, I couldn't do it. Too many lives at stake. And that's where the emotional and even now spiritual draining comes in. When you realize as a pastor in my situation, and again, this is applicable, just as applicable to true, authentic leaders. When you realize the number of lives that are at stake with regards to you doing your job and doing your service, then it can be so overwhelming. You know, I've had people that tried to reach me and tried to talk to me while I was on vacation, and I refused to answer the phone. I've learned this. I'm telling you, it may sound bad. Well, Pastor, it could be a life or death situation. Well, if I'm 500 miles away, there's not much I'm going to be able to do anyway. Now, Sister Dodie, you talked about having good associate ministers who could step in and kind of help carry the load in my absence. This is going to sound crazy to some of y'all, but it's the truth. Think about this. It's really not me who have to become more comfortable delegating. It's the people that have to become more comfortable with who I delegate to. I wrote this in my latest book. I'm not just a pastor, I'm a person. But there have been times that I have not been physically available for people, and I have sent a representative from the church, like a deacon or another minister, and the people were totally dissatisfied because I didn't come myself. Well, I'm 500, 800 miles away. What do you expect me to do? Some people would say, well, you the pastor, you should have jumped on a plane and came right home. You know? What was it really going to change? If it was prayer that you were looking for, then there ought to be people who can pray with you. Tisha says, let me tell y'all, I don't want your job. I'd be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Listen, that sounds funny, but we are discovering that that's what's happening right now in ministerial circles. Pastors are walking away from ministry because the pressure and the people are literally driving them out of their minds. No peace, too much stress. Jesus said people be peopling. Yeah, they do. Lavonda says, no pastor job for me. Well, you better hope that God agrees with that for the rest of your days. Because you know, if the Lord speaks clear enough to you, you'll do whatever he tells you to do. Deacon Ron said deacons are supposed to remove some of the workload to free up the pastor for ministry. That's absolutely right. That was the purpose of the deacon. The apostle said, pick ye out among you 7 men filled with the Holy Ghost, whom we may appoint this business. What business? The business to seeing to the physical needs of the widows and the orphans and the people, you know, so that we won't have to leave the word of God to go and serve tables. In other words, we should be able to stay constantly in the word of God so that we can feed the sheep the word of God. All right. Toya says, I bet there are some Christian Karens out there. They only want to deal with the pastor. Yes, there are absolutely people out there that only want to deal with the pastor, and they want to have exclusive access to the pastor. Trust me, y'all, we've had people leave Canaan when they found out that they weren't going to have just exclusive access to me. I mean, think about it. We've got now, I would say, hundreds of people that are part of our congregation. And there was a time when we had over 1,500 people. You know, there was a time when we were actually seeing between 11 and 1,200 people every Sunday, but we had more than 3,000 people on our roll at one given time. Some of you all didn't know that. Now, can you imagine me trying to minister individually to well over 3,000 people? Because trust me, just because people don't show up at church, if they think their name is on the roll of the church, then they feel like that they ought to be served like any other member in the church and of the church. And you better do it, and do it now. Otherwise, your name is going to be mud, Pastor. It happens all the time. And again, this is one of the reasons why some pastors walk away from ministry. Y'all making me make this all about pastors. And I want this to be really about you and you understanding that there are times that you need to just step away and break away and do what you need to do to reignite your passions. But since if y'all going to make it about ministry, there are a lot of people who once were faithful and worked diligently in ministry who no longer do so. They lost their passion for it. They didn't just step away, though. They stepped out. And that's not a good thing. That's absolutely not a good thing. They totally abandoned ministry altogether. And some of it happened because they didn't take the time to disengage, decompress, recover, recharge. They didn't take the time to do that soon enough. They waited until they were out there too deep. Vonda addressed what I said about if the Lord tells her to do something. She says, yes, I will do whatever God have told me to do, but don't speak now about Pastor, and I'm good. Well, you know what? I can't say that I blame you. I really can't. And you all, not that I'm trying to paint a terrible picture about pastoring, because I don't want anybody to get the idea that pastoring by no means is ever enjoyable, because it is. It can be very enjoyable. But if you're looking to do it thinking that you're going to always enjoy it, you better find another vocation. Find something else to do. Toya says, with regards to people, the entitlement, I couldn't do it. Thank you. Some people feel like they're entitled to certain things. And they feel like, there are a lot of people who feel like that because they're a member of a certain church, then they can place certain demands on the pastor. And some of the things that I hear them say, well, we pay your salary. And most of the time when people bring up something like that, they're not a tither. They're not even a constant contributor. You know, and that's not fair to do anyway. You know, just because a pastor agrees to a certain compensation, that doesn't mean he becomes an indentured servant where he's just a slave. Yeah. So again, whatever setting you may be in, however this may apply, it may even apply to relationships. You know, if you've lost your passion for a certain relationship, even now, sometimes you have to step back. You know, now for you married people, I'm not suggesting that you separate. In disengaging or decompressing, what I failed to mention that is that during that process, you start to reassess. And in reassessing, it's always best to reassess yourself rather than reassessing the people that you're serving or dealing with. Why do I say that? I say that because um, reassessment often is for the sake of making changes. And the only person that you can change is you. So sometimes you have to step back, take a good hard look at yourself, see what it is, or figure out what adjustments you need to make. And then you begin to move accordingly. Few more comments and then we're going to close it out. A lot of people don't realize that your job is basically a 24/7 days a week job. Yes, it is. It is. I can't tell you how much my mind is engaged thinking about ministry. I sit and think hours at a time with regards to what I need to do in ministry, how God wants me to do it. What mandates should I present before the people? How shall I respond when people respond a certain way? How do I respond when people reject what God has told me to share with the people? And having those things constantly running through your mind, occupying your mind space, it can be overwhelming. There are times when it keeps me up at night. And although sometimes pastors and preachers and leaders might say, well, I just ain't going to worry about it. Sometimes it's impossible just not to worry about it. You can't just dismiss it like that. Now, it becomes a little easier to compartmentalize these things and keep them in their proper perspective when you've gone through the process of doing what it takes to make sure your passions or your fires continuously burn. If you go through that process every now and then of disengaging and decompressing and going through that time of recovering and all of that, if you do that on a regular basis, if you perform your passion maintenance on a regular basis, then you can keep that fire of passion burning within you. Toya says, dealing with the general public in any capacity is very demanding and draining, especially when you're working in the capacity of meeting people's needs, their problems. That's true. And I feel for those. I'm telling you, I really have a heart for those who serve people in very special capacities. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy task. And that's the reason why self-care is very important. Just because you're one who believes in self-care, don't let anybody convince you that you're being selfish. I had a person actually suggest that I was not being Christ-like when I finally decided that there was something that I needed to scale back on. What would Jesus do? I'll tell you what he'd do. He'd go up in the mountain by himself and he'd sit and pray, talk to the Father, get away from the people. Sometimes we seem to overlook those passages of scripture. There were times where Jesus would send the disciples away. He would send them on off somewhere else. And he'd say, hey, I'll catch up with y'all later. I need some me time. I need some alone time. I need time to recuperate. I need time to re-energize. Yes, he was the Son of God, but while he was here on earth, he was housed in humanity. and sometimes we become, Rochelle, you threw it up there just as I was about to say it. People can be so self-righteous and unreasonable, and that is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Tisha follows up by, sometimes the most spiritual thing to do is to go to sleep. Yes. Hallelujah. Woo. Yes, you sure right about that. You got to rest from all that stuff. Sometimes you just have to rest from all the mess. So again, bottom line here, y'all, is that you make sure that you do whatever it takes to ensure your personal well-being. You do whatever it takes to maintain your fires of passion, so that you can constantly and consistently be effective in everything that you do. Well, that's all I have for tonight. I went a lot longer than I really anticipated, but it happens that I'm so glad you all joined me tonight. Again, my intentions is to be on here again tomorrow evening. But y'all, I stated earlier, for those of you that came on a little late, I missed a couple of days, these past couple of days, because things came up. I had some scheduling conflict, but then sometimes things just happen. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Lady Ann said to me, sometimes you got to take the pressure off yourself. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, And I had to accept that tidbit of wisdom. But again, me being who I am, wanting to do what I feel like I need to do all the time and consistently, I get so caught up in the work that I can forget about myself. And I'm learning to do better in that respect. And I hope you will learn to do better as well. Now, whatever you're committed to, be committed, but also create a balance. I think that's the best thing that I can leave you with. Create a balance and know that it's okay at times to step away. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, well, you know what? I don't feel like it tonight, so I'm going to do something else. How about that? All right, y'all. That's it. Thank you for joining us once again. Hey, listen, if this really been good to you, if it's been beneficial for you, although you may not have shared the link to invite somebody to join us live for the discussion, you can still send them the link and share it with them, and hopefully they'll take the time to review what has been shared here tonight. Again, I encourage you to invite others to be a part of these Mocha moments, to share in the platform, to share in the discussion. It'll only serve to benefit us all. Well, y'all, with that, I'm going to say to you all, as I often do when I'm signing off, and that is God bless and good night.